The wheelchair sat empty in the corner of the bedroom, its chrome wheels catching the moonlight that streamed through the tall windows. Camille stared at it, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Just an hour ago, her new husband had needed that chair to move around. She had watched him struggle to transfer from it to their wedding bed, had reached out to help him, had accepted that this would be their life together. But now the chair was empty, and Marcus was standing by the window on two perfectly strong legs, stretching his arms above his head like a man who had never spent a single day unable to walk. The silk wedding dress she still wore felt heavy against her skin as she pressed herself against the closed bedroom door. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Was she dreaming? Had the stress of the wedding day finally caught up with her? But no, this was real. Her husband of 3 hours was standing there, tall and straight, without any sign of the disability that had defined their entire relationship. Marcus. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. He turned toward her, and for the first time since she had known him, there was no careful movement, no pause to adjust his position, no reliance on the chair that had been his constant companion. He moved with the easy grace of someone who had never been anything but perfectly healthy. Camille. He said her name softly, but she could hear something in his voice she had never heard before. Not the gentle patience she was used to, not the quiet strength that had first attracted her to him. There was something else there now, something that made her stomach twist with uncertainty. 3 months ago, when she had first met Marcus Wellington at the charity gala where she worked as an event coordinator, she never would have imagined this moment. She had been dealing with a crisis involving the sound system when she had literally bumped into his wheelchair, sending papers flying everywhere. Instead of being angry, he had laughed and helped her gather the scattered documents, his warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine amusement. That night had changed everything. Marcus was nothing like the wealthy men she usually dealt with at these events. He didn't talk down to her or treat her like she was invisible. He asked about her work, her dreams, her life growing up in Atlanta with her grandmother who had raised her after her parents died in a car crash when she was 12. He listened when she talked, really listened, and when he spoke about his own life, there was a humility there that she found incredibly attractive. The fact that he was in a wheelchair had surprised some people when they started dating, she knew. A few of her friends had made comments about his money, suggesting that was the real attraction. But Camille had fallen for Marcus long before she fully understood just how wealthy he really was. She had fallen for his kindness, his sense of humor, the way he made her feel like the most important person in the room whenever they were together. He had told her about the accident that had changed his life 5 years earlier. A rock climbing trip gone wrong, a fall that had damaged his spine and left him paralyzed from the waist down. He spoke about it matter-of-factly, without self-pity, explaining how he had built his tech company from his hospital bed during his recovery, how he had learned to see his disability not as a limitation but as a new way of experiencing the world. Camille had admired his strength, his refusal to let his circumstances define him. She had loved him for who he was, wheelchair and all. The money had been nice, she wouldn't lie about that. Growing up poor had taught her the value of financial security. But it wasn't why she had said yes when he proposed on a quiet evening in his penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling below them as he had maneuvered his wheelchair closer to where she sat on the couch. Now, watching him stand there in the moonlight, she felt like everything she thought she knew had been turned upside down. "I can explain," Marcus said, taking a step toward her. Step. On his own 2 feet. Camille's hands shook as she gripped the door handle behind her. "Explain what?" she managed to ask. "Explain how you can suddenly walk. Explain how everything you've told me about your accident, about your life, has been a lie." "It wasn't a lie," he said quickly. "Not exactly." "Not exactly?" Her voice was getting stronger now, anger beginning to mix with the confusion and fear. "You either can walk or you can't, Marcus. There's no not exactly about it." He ran his hands through his dark hair, a gesture she had seen him make hundreds of times, but now it looked different somehow. Less careful, more natural. Like someone who had never had to think about balance or positioning. "The accident was real," he said. "Everything I told you about that was true. I was paralyzed, Camille. For 2 years I couldn't move my legs at all." "Was?" she repeated. Past tense. "There was an experimental treatment," he continued, his words coming faster now. "Stem cell therapy combined with some new surgical techniques. It was risky, expensive, and there was no guarantee it would work. But slowly over the past 3 years I've been getting feeling back. Movement. Strength." Camille stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. 3 years? You've been able to walk for 3 years? Not at first. It started with just tiny movements, then physical therapy, then... He gestured helplessly at himself. Then this. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out louder than she intended. We've been together for 3 months, Marcus. We got married today. When exactly were you planning to share this little detail about your life? The hurt in her voice seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He took another step toward her, and she couldn't help but notice how steady he was, how strong his legs looked beneath the expensive fabric of his wedding suit. I wanted to, he said. So many times I almost told you. But I was scared. Scared of what? Scared that you would leave. The words hung in the air between them. Scared that once you knew the truth, you would think I had been playing some kind of game with you. Camille felt tears starting to burn behind her eyes. What truth, Marcus? Because I thought the truth was that I had fallen in love with a man who happened to use a wheelchair. I thought the truth was that we had built something real together, something based on honesty and trust. We did, he said desperately. Everything between us has been real, Camille. My feelings for you, the way we connect, the love I have for you, none of that was pretend. But this was. She pointed at the empty wheelchair. This huge part of who you are, this thing that affects every single day of your life, this was all pretend. It's complicated. No, it's not. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. You lied to me. For 3 months, you looked me in the eye and you lied to me about something fundamental about yourself. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and in that silence, Camille could hear the sound of their wedding reception continuing downstairs. Music and laughter and the voices of 200 guests celebrating what they thought was the beginning of a beautiful marriage. She wondered what those people would think if they could see this scene playing out above their heads. Why, she asked finally. Why keep pretending? What possible reason could you have? Marcus walked to the bed and sat down heavily, his head in his hands. Even that simple movement looked wrong to her now, too easy, too natural for someone she had believed needed assistance with basic mobility. Have you ever heard of inspiration porn? He asked without looking up. Camille frowned. What? It's a term disabled people use to describe the way society treats us sometimes. Like we're not real people with complex lives and feelings, but just inspiration for able-bodied people to feel good about themselves. Look at that brave disabled person, overcoming obstacles and living their life. Isn't that wonderful? She didn't know what to say to that. When I was in the wheelchair, Marcus continued, people saw me differently. Some pitied me, some were inspired by me, some couldn't see past the chair at all. But very few people saw me as just Marcus. Just a regular guy who happened to have a different way of getting around. I saw you as just Marcus, Camille said quietly. He looked up at her then and she could see the pain in his eyes. I know you did. That's why I fell in love with you. The words should have made her feel better, but they didn't. If anything, they made the whole situation worse. So you fell in love with me because I accepted you for who you were, she said slowly, but you couldn't trust me enough to show me who you really are? When I could walk again, Marcus said, everything changed. Suddenly, people expected different things from me. The business world treated me differently. Even my friends acted like I should be grateful every second of every day for this miracle. Like I should be constantly celebrating and being inspirational about my recovery. Camille moved away from the door, walking to the window where he had been standing when she first saw him upright. The view from their bedroom showed the gardens behind his estate, perfectly manicured lawns stretching out under the moonlight. But that's not how you felt? She asked. I was grateful, he said. Of course I was grateful. But I was also angry. Angry that it had taken 5 years of my life. Angry that I had to go through all that pain and struggle and uncertainty. And I was confused about who I was supposed to be now. Was I still the same person who had learned to see the world from a wheelchair? Or was I supposed to go back to being the person I was before the accident? Camille could understand some of what he was saying, but it didn't excuse what he had done to her, to them. So you decided to keep using the wheelchair? She asked. Sometimes, he said. When it felt right. When I wanted to remember who I had been during those years. When I wanted to stay connected to that community, to that experience. And you decided to lie to me about it. Marcus stood up again, and she watched him move across the room with a mixture of fascination and betrayal. All those times she had offered to help him with things he could have easily done himself. All those times she had chosen restaurants based on their accessibility, had automatically looked for ramps and elevators, had felt protective of him in crowded spaces. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. When we first met, I was having one of those days where I needed the chair. Not physically but emotionally. I had just come from a board meeting where the other members had spent an hour talking about my inspiring recovery instead of the business at hand. I was tired of being seen as a symbol instead of a person. So you went back to the wheelchair. And then I met you. His voice got softer. And you were so perfect, Camille. You didn't treat me like I was broken or like I was a hero. You just treated me like a man you were interested in getting to know. And I thought maybe I can tell her the truth after a few dates. Maybe once she knows me better, she'll understand. But you didn't tell me after a few dates. No. He looked ashamed now. Because by then I was falling in love with you and I was terrified that the truth would change everything between us. I convinced myself that it didn't matter, that what we had was real regardless of whether I could walk or not. Camille turned back to face him, and she could see how much this conversation was costing him. But her own hurt was too fresh, too raw for her to feel much sympathy yet. It would have mattered to me, she said. Not because I care whether you can walk, but because I care about honesty. I care about being trusted with the truth about the person I'm building a life with. I know, he said. I know that now. But I was scared, and the longer I waited, the harder it became to find the right words, the right moment. So you thought our wedding night would be the right moment? There was an edge to her voice now. You thought you'd just surprise me with the truth after we said our vows? Marcus looked stricken. I was going to tell you before the wedding. I had it all planned out. But then you seemed so happy, so excited, and I kept thinking about how perfect everything was, and I couldn't bring myself to risk ruining it. So instead you decided to ruin our marriage. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the reception winding down, cars starting up in the circular driveway as guests began to head home. Soon, it would be quiet except for the catering staff cleaning up, and she and Marcus would be alone with this massive lie that had been revealed between them. I don't want to ruin our marriage, Marcus said quietly. I want to save it. I want to find a way to make this right. Camille looked at him standing there in his wedding suit, looking like a completely different person than the man she had thought she was marrying. But at the same time, she could see traces of the Marcus she had fallen in love with. The way he held his shoulders when he was worried. The expression in his eyes when he was trying to find the right words. The way his voice got softer when he was being vulnerable. I don't know if you can make this right, she said honestly. I don't know how to trust you after this. Let me try, he said. Please, Camille. Let me try to explain everything to help you understand why I made the choices I made. Maybe they were wrong choices, but they came from a place of love, not deception. She wanted to believe him. Even standing there, feeling betrayed and confused and angry, she wanted to believe that the man she had married was still the same man she had fallen in love with. But how could she be sure of anything about him now? I need time, she said finally. I need to think about all of this. Marcus nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his face. Of course. Whatever you need. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight, she said. Camille. No, she said firmly. I can't share a bed with you tonight, Marcus. Not after this. I need space to process what you've told me. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded again. I understand. She moved toward the door, then stopped and looked back at him. Tomorrow I want the whole truth. Everything. No more secrets, no more lies, no more trying to protect me from things you think might upset me. If we have any chance of making this work, it has to start with complete honesty. Yes, he said immediately. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you. Camille left him standing there in their bedroom and walked down the hall to the guest room, her wedding dress rustling around her feet with each step. As she closed the door behind her and leaned against it, she realized that her hands were still shaking. In the space of an hour, her entire understanding of her new husband had been turned upside down. The man she had married was not the man she thought he was, and she had no idea what that meant for their future together. All she knew was that tomorrow she would have to decide whether love was enough to overcome a lie this big, or whether some betrayals were simply too much to forgive. Camille woke up to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and for a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back, and she felt her stomach clench with a mixture of anger and sadness. She was in the guest room of Marcus's estate, wearing a wrinkled wedding dress, because her husband of less than 24 hours had revealed that their entire relationship had been built on a lie. She sat up in the bed and looked around the room. Like everything else in Marcus's house, it was beautifully decorated and expensively furnished. The guest room was probably larger than the entire apartment she had been living in before the wedding, with its own sitting area and private bathroom. Under normal circumstances, she would have felt grateful for such luxury. Today, it just reminded her of how different their worlds were, and how many things about Marcus's life she apparently didn't know. There was a soft knock on the door. Camille? Marcus's voice was muffled through the wood. "I brought you some coffee." She looked down at herself. The wedding dress was hopelessly wrinkled, and she had slept in her makeup. She probably looked terrible, but she didn't really care at the moment. "Come in," she said. The door opened and Marcus entered carrying a tray with coffee, orange juice, and what looked like fresh pastries. He was dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, and seeing him walk normally across the room with the tray still felt surreal to her. "I wasn't sure how you take your coffee in the morning," he said, setting the tray down on the small table by the window. "I brought cream and sugar just in case." "Black is fine," she said, accepting the mug he offered her. The coffee was perfect, rich and strong, and she realized she needed the caffeine more than she had thought. Marcus sat down in the chair across from her, and for a moment they were both quiet. The silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy with everything that had been said the night before. "How did you sleep?" he asked finally. "I didn't," Camille said honestly. "I kept thinking about everything you told me, trying to make sense of it all." Marcus nodded. "I didn't sleep either. I kept thinking about what I should have done differently, how I should have told you the truth from the beginning." Camille took another sip of coffee and studied his face. In the morning light, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like a man who had spent the night wrestling with regret. "You said you would tell me everything today," she said. "The whole truth?" "Yes." He straightened up in his chair. "Whatever you want to know, I'll answer honestly." She had spent most of the night thinking about what questions to ask, but now that the moment was here, she hardly knew where to start. There were so many things she needed to understand. "When you had the accident," she began, "everything you told me about that was true?" "Yes," Marcus said. "I was rock climbing in Colorado with some friends from college. It was supposed to be a routine climb, something I'd done dozens of times before. But there was loose rock and I fell about 40 feet. Broke my back in 3 places, damaged my spinal cord. The doctor said I would never walk again." Camille could hear the pain in his voice as he talked about it, and she believed him. This part of his story at least was real. "And you were paralyzed for 2 years?" "Completely. From the waist down. I went through all the stages you'd expect: anger, depression, acceptance. I had to learn how to do everything differently. How to get dressed, how to shower, how to drive. How to run a business from a wheelchair." "But then you found out about the experimental treatment?" Marcus nodded. "My doctor mentioned it almost casually during a routine appointment. Said there were some new procedures being tested, but they were risky and expensive, and the success rate was low. Most insurance companies wouldn't cover experimental treatments. But money wasn't an issue for you." "No," he said quietly. "Money wasn't an issue. So I started researching it, talking to specialists, trying to understand what the treatment involved and what my chances were." Camille set down her coffee mug. "What kind of treatment was it?" "Stem cell therapy," Marcus explained. "They harvested cells from my bone marrow and injected them directly into the damaged areas of my spinal cord. The idea was that the stem cells would help repair the nerve damage and restore function. But it had to be combined with intensive physical therapy and some additional surgical procedures to remove scar tissue. And it worked." "Slowly," he said. "Very slowly. The first sign was just a tiny bit of sensation in my left foot. I thought I was imagining it at first. Then, after months of physical therapy, I could move my toes slightly. Then my ankles. It took almost 2 years of treatment and therapy before I could stand up, and another year before I could walk normally." Camille tried to imagine what that process must have been like for him. The hope and frustration and uncertainty of not knowing whether the treatment would work, of making slow progress over such a long period of time. "Why didn't you tell people?" she asked. "When you started to recover, why keep it a secret?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, and she could see him choosing his words carefully. "At first, I didn't tell anyone because I wasn't sure it would last," he said. "I was afraid that if I got my hopes up or if other people got their hopes up, and then the progress stopped or reversed, it would be devastating. But it didn't stop or reverse. No, it didn't. And by the time I was sure the recovery was permanent, I had started to realize how differently people treated me when they thought I could walk again." Camille frowned. "What do you mean?" "Before the accident, I was just another wealthy businessman. People took me seriously, but they also felt free to disagree with me, to challenge me, to treat me like an equal. When I was in the wheelchair, some people pitted me, but others seemed to respect me more. They saw me as someone who had overcome adversity, who had perspective they didn't have." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens. Even now, watching him move so easily, Camille felt a strange disconnect between this Marcus and the one she thought she had married. But when people found out I could walk again, he continued, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just a successful businessman or someone who had adapted to a disability. I was a miracle, a medical success story, an inspiration. And you didn't want to be seen that way? Marcus turned back to her. I wanted to be seen as a person. Not a symbol, not a miracle, just a person. And I found that when I used the wheelchair sometimes, people related to me more naturally. They weren't constantly asking about my recovery or wanting to hear the details of my treatment or telling me how lucky I was. Camille could understand some of what he was saying, but it still didn't excuse the lie he had told her. So you decided to keep using the wheelchair sometimes, even though you didn't need it? Yes, he said simply. And I thought that was my choice to make. I thought it was a harmless way to control how people saw me. But then you met me. Then I met you, he agreed. And you were different from anyone I had ever known. You saw me as Marcus, not as a disability or a recovery story or a wealthy man or anything else. You just saw me. Camille felt tears starting to sting her eyes again. But I wasn't seeing you, was I? I was seeing a version of you that you created specifically to hide the truth from me. The feelings were real, Marcus said urgently, sitting back down across from her. Everything between us was real, Camille. The way we talked, the way we laughed together, the way I felt when I was with you. None of that was pretend. But the fundamental facts about your life were pretend. Marcus looked down at his hands. Yes, he said quietly. And I know how wrong that was now. I know I should have told you the truth from the very beginning. Why didn't you? The question came out more plaintive than she had intended. Even after we started getting serious, even after we talked about marriage, why didn't you trust me with the truth? Because I was scared, he said, looking up at her. I was scared that if you knew I could walk, you would think our whole relationship had been some kind of game to me. I was scared you would think I had been testing you or manipulating you, or that I didn't really need you. Did you really need me? Camille asked. The question surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. What do you mean? I mean, one of the things I loved about our relationship was feeling like we really needed each other. You needed me for some practical things, yes, but more than that, you needed me for emotional support, for companionship, for partnership. And I needed you for those same things, plus I needed the security you could provide, the stability. She paused, trying to find the right words for what she was feeling. But if you can walk, if you're not actually disabled, then what do you need me for? You're wealthy enough to have anything you want, powerful enough to get anything you need. Why would someone like you choose someone like me? Marcus stared at her. Someone like you? Camille, do you have any idea how incredible you are? I'm a girl from Atlanta who grew up poor and works as an event coordinator, she said flatly. I'm not rich, I'm not connected, I don't have anything special to offer someone in your position. You have everything to offer, Marcus said fiercely. You're intelligent and kind and funny and strong. You care about people. You work hard. You see the good in everyone you meet. You made me feel like a complete person again, not just someone defined by what happened to my body. Camille wanted to believe him, but the doubt had taken root in her mind. If I'm so wonderful, she said, why didn't you trust me enough to be honest with me? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm an idiot, he said finally. Because I let my fear override my common sense. Because I convinced myself that I was protecting what we had instead of realizing that I was undermining it. He leaned forward in his chair. Camille, I need you to understand something. The fact that I can walk doesn't change anything about how I feel about you. It doesn't change the fact that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. It doesn't change the fact that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But it does change things, Camille said. It changes the fact that I thought I knew who I was marrying. It changes the fact that I thought our relationship was built on honesty. It was built on love, Marcus said. Everything else we can figure out. But the love is real, Camille. That was never a lie. Camille stood up and walked to the window where he had been standing. The gardens looked peaceful and perfect, like something from a magazine. Nothing like the chaotic neighborhood where she had grown up, where her grandmother had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat after her parents died. Can I ask you something? She said without turning around. Anything. If you hadn't been in the wheelchair when we met, would you have ever noticed me? The question hung in the air for a moment. Yes, Marcus said firmly. Absolutely yes. How can you be so sure? Because I know what I'm attracted to in a person, and it has nothing to do with whether or not I use a wheelchair. I'm attracted to intelligence and kindness and humor and strength. I'm attracted to people who are genuine, who don't put on airs, who treat everyone with respect regardless of their status or situation. Camille turned back to face him. But we met at a charity gala. You were surrounded by dozens of women who probably fit that description. Rich women, connected women, women who would have been a better match for your lifestyle. None of them were you, Marcus said simply. Despite everything, Camille felt her heart flutter a little at his words. But she couldn't let herself be swayed by romantic declarations, not when there were still so many practical questions that needed answers. What happens now? She asked. Do you keep using the wheelchair sometimes? Do you tell people the truth about your recovery? Do we pretend this conversation never happened? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I was so focused on trying to find the right time to tell you the truth that I didn't really consider what would happen after I did. Well, we need to figure it out, Camille said. Because I can't live a lie, Marcus. I can't be part of deceiving people about something this fundamental. I understand, he said. And you're right. If we're going to make this work, everything has to be honest from now on. If we're going to make this work? Camille repeated. You think there's a chance we won't? Marcus looked stricken. I hope we will. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. But I understand if this is too much for you to forgive. Camille sat back down on the bed, suddenly feeling exhausted. Less than 24 hours ago, she had been the happiest she had ever been in her life. She had married the man she loved, surrounded by friends and family, looking forward to building a future together. Now she felt like she didn't know anything for certain anymore. I need more time, she said. I need to think about all of this, to figure out how I feel about everything you've told me. How much time? Marcus asked. I don't know. Maybe I could go stay with my friend Lisa for a few days. Get some space to clear my head. Marcus looked like the suggestion physically hurt him, but he nodded. If that's what you need. It's what I need, Camille said. At least for now. She looked around the guest room, thinking about what she would need to pack, how she would explain this to Lisa without going into all the details. Camille? Marcus said softly. Yes. I love you. That's the one thing in all of this that I need you to believe. Everything else was complicated and stupid and wrong, but my love for you is simple and true and real. Camille met his eyes and she could see the sincerity there, the pain, the hope. Despite everything, she still loved him too. But love, she was learning, wasn't always enough to overcome betrayal. Sometimes it took more than love to build a marriage that could last. I know you love me, she said finally. But I need to figure out if that's enough. Lisa's apartment was a small one-bedroom in downtown Atlanta, nothing like the luxury Camille had gotten used to at Marcus's estate. But sitting on Lisa's couch with a cup of tea and her best friend curled up in the chair across from her, Camille felt more at home than she had in days. So let me get this straight, Lisa said, tucking her feet under her. Your billionaire husband can actually walk, but he's been pretending he can't for the entire time you've known him? That's the basic situation, yes, Camille said. Lisa shook her head. Girl, your life is like a soap opera. It doesn't feel like entertainment from where I'm sitting, Camille said dryly. I'm sorry, Lisa said quickly. I didn't mean to make light of it. Wow, that's a lot to process. Camille had been staying with Lisa for 3 days now, and it was the first time she had felt ready to talk about what had happened on her wedding night. She had told Lisa that she and Marcus had had a fight and needed some space, but she hadn't gone into the details until now. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. I don't know, Camille said honestly. Part of me wants to go back and try to work things out. But part of me feels like I can't trust him anymore. Do you still love him? Yes, Camille said without hesitation. That's what makes this so hard. If I didn't love him, I could just walk away. But I do love him, and I thought he was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Lisa was quiet for a moment, thinking. Can I ask you something that might be hard to hear? Go ahead. Do you think part of your attraction to Marcus was the fact that he was in a wheelchair? Camille frowned. What do you mean? I mean, did it make you feel good about yourself to be with someone who had a disability? Did it make you feel like you were being noble or generous or something? The question stung, partly because Camille had wondered the same thing herself over the past few days. I don't think so, she said slowly. I never thought of myself as doing him a favor by being with him. If anything, I felt like he was doing me a favor by choosing me. Why? Because he's Marcus Wellington. He's brilliant and successful and wealthy, and he could have had any woman he wanted. The fact that he chose me felt like a miracle. But maybe that's exactly why he felt like he couldn't tell you the truth, Lisa said gently. Maybe he was afraid that if you knew he could walk, you'd start wondering why someone like him would choose someone like you. Camille stared at her friend. That's almost exactly what I said to him. And what did he say? He said I was incredible and wonderful and that the fact that he could walk didn't change how he felt about me. Do you believe him? Camille pulled her knees up to her chest. I want to. But I keep thinking about all the times I helped him with things he could have done himself. All the times I made decisions based on his supposed limitations. It makes me feel stupid. You're not stupid, Lisa said firmly. You're a person who fell in love and wanted to be supportive of your partner. That's not stupid, that's human. But what if everyone else thinks I'm stupid? What if people find out the truth and think I was naive or gullible for not figuring it out? Who cares what other people think? Lisa said. This is about you and Marcus, not about anyone else. Camille knew her friend was right, but it didn't make the embarrassment any easier to deal with. There's something else, she said. Something I haven't told you. What? I think part of me is angry that he can walk. Lisa raised her eyebrows. Angry that he recovered from a devastating injury? I know how that sounds, Camille said quickly. And I don't mean I wish he was still paralyzed. I would never wish that on anyone, especially not someone I love. But I'm angry that he got this amazing second chance, this miracle recovery, and instead of celebrating it or sharing it with the people who care about him, he hid it. He turned it into a lie. That does make sense, Lisa said thoughtfully. And I'm angry that he made me part of the lie without my knowledge. Every time we went somewhere and I worried about accessibility, every time I felt protective of him in crowds, every time I admired his strength in dealing with his disability, I was being made a fool of, and I didn't even know it. Camille felt tears starting again and she wiped at her eyes impatiently. She was tired of crying about this. He stole something from me, she continued. He stole my right to know who I was really falling in love with. He stole my right to make an informed decision about whether I wanted to marry him. But would it have changed your decision? Lisa asked. If you had known from the beginning that he could walk, would you still have fallen in love with him? I think so, Camille said. But I'll never know for sure now, will I? Because that's not how it happened. Lisa got up and moved to sit next to Camille on the couch. Can I tell you what I think? Please. I think Marcus made a really stupid mistake. I think he let his fear and insecurity lead him to make a choice that hurt you deeply. But I don't think he did it to be malicious or to make you look foolish. I think he did it because he was terrified of losing you. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't, Lisa agreed. But it might make it forgivable. Camille leaned back against the couch cushions. How do I know he won't lie to me about other things? How do I trust someone who kept such a huge secret from me for months? You don't know, Lisa said honestly. Trust is something that has to be rebuilt over time. But the question is whether you think he's worth taking that risk for. Before Camille could answer, her phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at the screen and saw Marcus's name. Is that him? Lisa asked. Yeah. Camille opened the message. He says he wants to show me something and he's asking if I'll meet him tomorrow afternoon. Are you ready to see him? Camille thought about it. She had been hiding at Lisa's apartment for 3 days, but she couldn't hide forever. Eventually she was going to have to decide what she wanted to do about her marriage. I think so, she said. I think I need to hear what else he has to say. The next day, Camille drove to the address Marcus had sent her. Instead of his estate, it was a medical facility on the other side of town. She found him waiting for her in the lobby, and seeing him again after 3 days apart made her heart race despite everything that had happened between them. He was using his wheelchair. Hi, he said softly as she approached. Hi, she replied. What are we doing here? I want you to meet someone, Marcus said. Someone who can help you understand why I made the choices I made. He led her down a hallway to a physical therapy room where a woman in her 40s was working with a patient who looked to be in his 20s. The young man was strapped into a standing frame, working to bear weight on his legs while the therapist encouraged him. That's Dr. Sarah Chin, Marcus said quietly. She's the physical therapist who worked with me during my recovery. And that's James. He's going through the same experimental treatment I went through. They watched for a few minutes as Dr. Chin guided James through his exercises. Camille could see the intense concentration on the young man's face, the determination mixed with frustration as he worked to make his legs respond to his commands. It's been 18 months since James started treatment, Marcus said. He can stand for about 5 minutes now, but he still can't walk. Dr. Chin thinks it might be another year before he can take his first steps, if the treatment works for him at all. Why are you showing me this? Camille asked. Because I want you to understand what the recovery process was like for me. It wasn't like flipping a switch. It was 3 years of hope and disappointment and tiny victories and major setbacks. There were days when I thought I was getting better, and then days when I couldn't feel anything at all. Dr. Chin noticed them watching and came over after she finished with James. "Marcus," she said warmly. "It's good to see you. How are you doing?" "I'm okay, Sarah. I wanted you to meet my wife, Camille." Dr. Chin shook Camille's hand. "Congratulations on your marriage. Marcus has told me so much about you." "Thank you," Camille said, though she felt strange being introduced as Marcus's wife when their marriage felt so uncertain. "Sarah," Marcus said, "would you mind telling Camille about what my recovery was like? About why some patients choose not to publicize their progress?" Dr. Chin looked between them, and Camille got the sense that she understood there was more to this conversation than casual curiosity. "Marcus's case was unusual," she said carefully. "Most patients who go through this treatment see gradual improvement over many years, if they see improvement at all. Marcus had better results than we typically expect, but it came with its own challenges." "What kind of challenges?" Camille asked. "The psychological aspect," Dr. Chin explained. "When someone has been paralyzed for years, they've built their entire identity around adapting to that reality. They've learned new ways of doing things, they've connected with a community of people who share that experience, they've developed strength and perspective that comes from overcoming that particular challenge." She gestured toward James, who was now resting in his wheelchair while another patient worked in the standing frame. "When function starts to return, it can be overwhelming. Some patients feel guilty, like they're leaving behind the community that supported them. Others feel pressure to be grateful every moment of every day. And some feel like they don't know who they're supposed to be anymore." "Is that how Marcus felt?" Camille asked. Dr. Chin looked at Marcus, who nodded for her to continue. "Marcus struggled with the transition more than most," she said. "He had built a successful business and a fulfilling life while using a wheelchair. When he could walk again, he felt like people expected him to be a completely different person. He felt like his recovery had become more important to everyone else than he was as an individual. So he kept using the wheelchair sometimes," Camille said. "It's not uncommon," Dr. Chin said. "Some patients find it comforting to maintain that connection to their experience, especially in situations where they want to be seen as the person they became during their recovery rather than as a medical miracle." Camille could understand that, but it still didn't excuse the lie Marcus had told her. "But it becomes a problem when it involves deceiving the people closest to you," Dr. Chin continued, and Camille got the sense that she and Marcus had discussed this before. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "It becomes a problem." After they left the medical facility, Marcus asked if Camille would drive with him to a park nearby. They sat on a bench overlooking a small lake and for a while they were both quiet. "I've been thinking about what you said," Marcus finally said. "About how I stole your right to make an informed decision about our relationship." "And? You're right. That's exactly what I did, and it was selfish and wrong." Camille watched a family of ducks swimming across the lake. "Why are you using the wheelchair today?" "Because I wanted you to see that it's not about the physical ability," Marcus said. "It's about the choice to be honest about who I am and what I've been through." "I don't understand." Marcus turned to face her. "I realized something over the past few days. It doesn't matter whether I can walk or not. What matters is that I was lying to you about something fundamental about myself. I was deciding for you what you needed to know about the person you were falling in love with." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that from now on, if we have a future together, everything is going to be honest. When I use the wheelchair, I'll tell you why. When I choose to walk, I'll tell you why. When I'm struggling with something or confused about something or scared of something, I'll tell you that too." Camille felt something loosen in her chest. "You really hurt me, Marcus." "I know I did. And I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I know how to express." "How do I know you won't lie to me about other things?" "You don't know," he said honestly. "Trust is something I'm going to have to earn back over time. But I'm willing to do that work if you're willing to give me the chance." Camille looked at him sitting in his wheelchair, this man who could walk but was choosing not to, this man who had lied to her but was now promising complete honesty. She still loved him, but love felt more complicated now than it had a week ago. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Anything. If we stay together, what happens with other people? Do we tell them the truth about your recovery? Do we keep pretending?" "We tell the truth," Marcus said without hesitation. "To everyone. I'm done pretending, Camille. If people want to see me as a medical miracle or an inspiration or whatever else, that's their choice. But I'm not going to lie anymore to try to control how they see me." "That's going to be hard," Camille said. "People are going to have questions. They're going to want explanations." "I know. But it's the right thing to do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ducks and thinking about the future. Finally, Camille spoke. "I want to try," she said. "I want to try to make this work. But it's going to take time for me to trust you completely again." Marcus's face lit up with relief and hope. "Whatever time you need. Whatever it takes. And no more secrets," Camille said firmly. "About anything. Even if you think it's something small or something that might upset me. I need complete honesty from now on." "Complete honesty," Marcus agreed. "I promise." Camille looked at him, this man she had married, this man who had broken her heart and was now asking for the chance to heal it. She still didn't know if their marriage would work, but she knew she wanted to try. "Okay," she said. "Let's go home." The drive back to Marcus's estate felt different than any car ride they had taken together before. Camille sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's specially equipped vehicle, the one with hand controls that allowed him to drive while using his wheelchair, and thought about how many small details of their life together had been shaped by his supposed disability. "We're going to need a different car," she said as they pulled into the circular driveway. Marcus looked at her in surprise. "What?" "This car," she said, gesturing at the hand controls. "If you're going to be honest about being able to walk, we can't keep driving around in a car that's only necessary if you can't use your legs." "I hadn't thought about that," Marcus said. "There are going to be a lot of practical things to figure out, aren't there?" "Probably," Camille agreed. "But we'll figure them out as we go." They went into the house together, and Camille was struck by how quiet it felt. When she had left 3 days ago, it had been full of the aftermath of their wedding, flowers everywhere, gifts still unopened, the remnants of what was supposed to have been the happiest day of their lives. "I had the housekeeper put away most of the wedding stuff," Marcus said, noticing her looking around. "I wasn't sure. I didn't know if you'd want to see it when you came back." "That was thoughtful," Camille said. "Thank you." They went into the living room and sat down on the couch together. There was still some awkwardness between them, a careful politeness that hadn't been there before. Camille wondered how long it would take for them to feel natural with each other again. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "When we were dating, were there times when you almost told me the truth?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Yes. Several times." "When?" "The first time was after we'd been dating for about a month. We were having dinner at that Italian place you love, and you were telling me about your grandmother and how she always taught you to be honest even when it was hard. I kept thinking about how disappointed she would be in me if she knew I was lying to you." Camille remembered that conversation. She had been talking about her grandmother's influence on her life, how the woman who raised her had always emphasized the importance of integrity and treating people with respect. "What stopped you?" "Fear," Marcus said simply. "I was falling in love with you, and I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd think I had been making fun of you or testing you somehow." "What other times?" "The night I proposed," Marcus said. "I had the ring, I had planned what I was going to say, but right before I asked you to marry me, I almost told you everything instead." Camille felt her heart clench. That had been such a perfect evening, sitting in Marcus's penthouse with the city lights twinkling below them, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world when he opened the ring box. "But you didn't." "No. Because you looked so happy, and I convinced myself that the happiness was what mattered most." "The happiness was built on a lie, though," Camille said quietly. "I know that now," Marcus said. "But at the time I told myself that my feelings for you were real, so everything else was just details." Camille could understand his reasoning, even if she didn't agree with it. "What about our wedding day? Did you think about telling me then?" Marcus nodded. "The whole day I kept looking for the right moment. When we were getting ready, when we were taking pictures during the ceremony, I kept thinking that I should stop everything and tell you the truth. But you didn't." "I was selfish," Marcus said. "I wanted that perfect day with you. I wanted to have those memories of our wedding before I risked losing you." Camille felt fresh anger rising in her chest. "So you were willing to let me marry you under false pretenses just so you could have a nice wedding?" "Yes," Marcus said, and his honesty surprised her. "And I know how terrible that sounds. I know how selfish and wrong it was. But I was so scared of losing you that I convinced myself it was better to have one perfect day than to risk never having any days with you at all." Camille stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the gardens were perfectly maintained, every hedge trimmed and every flower bed weeded. It was beautiful, but it felt artificial somehow, like a movie set designed to look like a real garden. "I need you to understand something," she said without turning around. "What you did didn't just hurt me. It made me question my own judgment. It made me wonder what else I might be wrong about, what other things I might be missing." "I'm sorry," Marcus said. And it made me feel stupid, she continued. Every time I think about all the ways I tried to be helpful and accommodating, all the times I felt proud of myself for being supportive, I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Marcus said firmly. You're a loving, caring person who wanted to support her partner. That's not something to be ashamed of. Camille turned back to face him. But it is something to be embarrassed about when it turns out your partner didn't need that support and was letting you provide it anyway. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You're right, he said finally. I should have thought about how it would make you feel to realize that some of your efforts to help me were unnecessary. I should have considered that it would be humiliating for you. Yes, you should have. I was so focused on my own fears and insecurities that I didn't think about how my choices would affect you. That was selfish and short-sighted. Camille sat back down on the couch, but farther away from Marcus than she had been before. How do we move forward from here? She asked. How do we build a marriage when I don't know if I can trust your judgment anymore? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. I think we take it one day at a time. I think I proved to you through my actions that I'm committed to being honest, and you decide whether that's enough. What if it's not enough? What if I can't get past this? Marcus looked like the question physically hurt him. Then I'll have to live with the fact that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too scared to trust you with the truth. Despite her anger and hurt, Camille felt her heart go out to him. She could see the genuine remorse in his face, the understanding of how badly he had messed up. I don't want our marriage to be destroyed, she said softly. But I also don't know how to get back to where we were before. Maybe we can't get back to where we were, Marcus said. Maybe we have to build something new instead. Something based on complete honesty this time. Maybe, Camille agreed. But it's going to be hard work. I'm willing to do the work, Marcus said. Are you? Camille thought about it. 3 days ago, she had been ready to walk away from her marriage rather than try to work through such a fundamental betrayal. But seeing Marcus at the medical facility, listening to Dr. Chin explain the complexities of recovery, watching him acknowledge the full extent of his mistakes, it had helped her understand that the situation was more complicated than simple deception. Yes, she said finally. I'm willing to try. Marcus's relief was visible. Thank you, he said. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm grateful you're willing to give me one. There are going to be conditions, Camille said. Name them. First, complete honesty about everything from now on. Not just the big things but the small things too. If you're feeling insecure or scared or confused about something, you tell me instead of trying to handle it on your own. Agreed. Second, we tell people the truth about your recovery. I don't want to be part of any more deceptions, even if they seem harmless. Agreed. Third, we go to counseling. Both of us together. I think we need help figuring out how to communicate better and how to rebuild trust. Marcus nodded. That sounds like a good idea. And fourth, Camille said, you have to be patient with me. I'm going to have questions and doubts and moments when I wonder if you're being honest with me. You can't get frustrated with me for needing reassurance. I understand, Marcus said. And I won't get frustrated. I know it's going to take time for you to trust me again. Camille felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. They had a long way to go, but at least they had a plan for moving forward. So what do we do first? She asked. First, I think we need to decide how to tell people about my recovery, Marcus said. Starting with our families. Camille's stomach clenched. She hadn't thought about how to explain this situation to her grandmother, or to Marcus's parents, or to all the friends and colleagues who had attended their wedding. That's going to be complicated, she said. Very complicated, Marcus agreed. But it has to be done. How do we even begin to explain it? Marcus thought for a moment. I think we start with the people closest to us and work our way out. Your grandmother, my parents, maybe a few close friends. We tell them the truth about my recovery and about the fact that I should have told you sooner. What about everyone else? All the people at our wedding, your business associates, the press. I think we issue some kind of statement, Marcus said. Something that explains the basic facts without going into all the personal details. Camille imagined the headlines that would result from such an announcement. Billionaire's medical miracle revealed. Tech CEO's secret recovery. It was going to be a media circus. Are you prepared for that? She asked. For all the attention and questions and speculation? Marcus nodded. I'm prepared. I should have been prepared for it 3 years ago when I first started walking again. This is the consequence of trying to keep it secret for so long. And you're sure you want to do this? Once we tell people, we can't take it back. I'm sure, Marcus said firmly. I'm tired of living a lie. I want to be able to walk into a room with you and not have to worry about maintaining a pretense. I want to be able to be completely myself with you and everyone else. Camille looked at him, this man she had married, this man who had hurt her so deeply but was now committed to making things right. She still had doubts, still had fears about whether they could make their marriage work. But she could see the determination in his face, the genuine commitment to change. Okay, she said. Let's start with my grandmother. She's going to have some choice words for both of us. Marcus smiled ruefully. I'm looking forward to it. I think I deserve whatever she has to say. Oh, you definitely do, Camille said, and for the first time since their wedding night, she found herself almost smiling back at him. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Camille's grandmother lived in a small house in the same Atlanta neighborhood where Camille had grown up. The house was tiny but impeccably maintained, with a front porch where Grandma Rose spent most evenings watching the comings and goings of her neighbors. As Marcus maneuvered his wheelchair up the ramp he had installed for their visits, Camille felt her stomach twist with nervousness. She's going to see right through both of us, Camille warned him. My grandmother has a sixth sense about when people are hiding something. Good, Marcus said. I don't want to hide anything anymore. They had called ahead to let Grandma Rose know they were coming, but they hadn't explained why. Camille had simply said they needed to talk to her about something important. Now, sitting on the familiar porch where she had spent so many childhood evenings, she wasn't sure how to begin. Well, this is a surprise, Grandma Rose said as she opened the front door. I wasn't expecting to see you two so soon after the wedding. Shouldn't you still be on your honeymoon? Camille and Marcus had canceled their planned trip to Italy, obviously, but they hadn't explained that to anyone yet. We decided to postpone the honeymoon for a little while, Camille said carefully. We had some things we needed to take care of first. Grandma Rose's sharp eyes moved between them, and Camille could see her taking in the tension, the careful distance Camille was maintaining from Marcus, the overall awkwardness of the situation. I see, she said simply. Well, come on in. I'll make some tea. They settled in the small living room, surrounded by family photos and the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. Grandma Rose served tea in her good china cups, the ones she only brought out for special occasions, and Camille wondered if this qualified as special or just strange. Now then, Grandma Rose said, settling into her favorite armchair, what's this important thing you need to talk to me about? Camille looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. Grandma, she began, there's something about Marcus that we need to tell you. Something I just found out myself a few days ago. Grandma Rose's expression sharpened. Go on. Marcus can walk, Camille said simply. He's been able to walk for 3 years, but he didn't tell me until our wedding night. The silence that followed was deafening. Grandma Rose set down her teacup with deliberate care and looked back and forth between them. Can walk, she repeated slowly. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. I had an experimental treatment that restored function to my legs. I should have told Camille about it from the beginning, but I didn't. I see. Grandma Rose's voice was dangerously quiet. And why exactly didn't you tell her? Marcus straightened up in his wheelchair. Because I was scared she would leave me if she knew the truth. The truth being that you could walk. The truth being that I had been using the wheelchair sometimes even though I didn't need it, Marcus clarified. I was afraid she would think I had been lying to her or making a fool of her. Which you had been, Grandma Rose said flatly. Yes, ma'am. I had been. Camille had never seen her grandmother look so angry. Rose Williams was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she had raised 6 children and countless grandchildren, and when she was truly mad, she could be formidable. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Grandma Rose said, her voice getting softer and more dangerous. You courted my granddaughter under false pretenses. You let her fall in love with a version of you that didn't exist. You let her plan a wedding and make vows to someone she didn't really know. And then you revealed the truth on your wedding night, after it was too late for her to make a different choice. That's correct, Marcus said quietly. And you, Grandma Rose turned to Camille, you've been married for less than a week and you're already having to deal with fundamental deception from your husband. Yes, ma'am. Grandma Rose stood up and walked to the window, looking out at her small front yard. Camille and Marcus sat in uncomfortable silence, waiting for whatever she was going to say next. Marcus, she said finally without turning around. Yes, ma'am? Stand up. Marcus looked confused. Ma'am? I said stand up. If you can walk, then stand up and walk over here. Marcus looked at Camille, who nodded. He transferred out of his wheelchair and stood up, then walked over to where Grandma Rose was standing by the window. Now walk back to the couch and sit down. Not in the wheelchair on the couch. Marcus did as she asked, moving with the easy grace Camille was still getting used to seeing. When he was seated on the couch, Grandma Rose turned around and looked at him. "How long?" she asked. "How long what? How long have you been able to do that?" 3 years, Marcus said. "And in all the time you've known my granddaughter, you never once thought to mention it?" "I thought about it many times. But I couldn't find the right words." Grandma Rose walked back to her chair and sat down, studying both of them with the intense gaze that had made Camille confess to countless childhood misdeeds. "Camille," she said, "how are you doing with all this?" "I'm angry," Camille said honestly. "And hurt. And confused about what to do next." "Are you thinking about leaving him?" The direct question surprised Camille. "I thought about it. But I decided I want to try to work things out." "Why?" "Because I love him. And because I think he made a stupid mistake, not a malicious one." Grandma Rose nodded thoughtfully. "And you, Marcus? What are you prepared to do to fix this mess you've made?" "Whatever it takes," Marcus said immediately. "Complete honesty from now on. Marriage counseling. Telling everyone the truth about my recovery. Whatever Camille needs from me." "That's what you say now. But what happens the next time you're scared of losing her? What happens the next time you think a lie might be easier than the truth?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "I hope I'll remember how much worse the lie made everything. I hope I'll remember that Camille deserves better than a husband who doesn't trust her with the truth." "Hope isn't good enough," Grandma Rose said sharply. "Hope is what got you into this mess in the first place. You hoped you could find the right time to tell her. You hoped she would understand. You hoped you could build a marriage on a foundation of deception." "You're right," Marcus said. "Hope isn't enough. I need to make a commitment to honesty and then keep that commitment, even when it's difficult." Grandma Rose leaned back in her chair, and Camille could see her weighing Marcus's words, trying to decide whether he was sincere. "Let me tell you something about marriage, young man," she said finally. "I was married to Camille's grandfather for 43 years before he passed. 43 years of good times and bad times, of sickness and health, of arguments and makeups and everything in between." Marcus nodded, listening intently. "And in all those years, the one thing that kept us together through everything else was trust. Not love, though we had plenty of that. Not attraction, though that was there too. Trust. The knowledge that we could count on each other to tell the truth, even when the truth was hard to hear." "I understand," Marcus said. "Do you?" "Because what you've done to my granddaughter is taken that foundation away from her. You've made her question whether she can believe anything you tell her. And trust, once it's broken, is the hardest thing in the world to rebuild." Camille felt tears starting to sting her eyes. Her grandmother was putting into words something she had been feeling but hadn't been able to articulate. "But it can be rebuilt?" Marcus asked. "It can," Grandma Rose said. "But it takes time and patience and absolute consistency. One more lie, one more omission, one more time you decide to protect her from something you think might upset her, and you'll lose her for good." "I won't lie to her again," Marcus said. "See that you don't." Grandma Rose's voice was stern, but Camille could hear the underlying affection there. Despite everything, she could tell her grandmother was willing to give Marcus a chance to make things right. "Now," Grandma Rose continued, "what's your plan for telling the rest of the family? Because I guarantee you, if I figured out something was wrong the minute you walked in here, everyone else is going to figure it out too." "We're going to tell them the truth," Camille said. "Starting with your brothers and sisters, then Marcus's parents, then everyone else." "Good," Grandma Rose said. "And what about the media? This is going to be a big story once it gets out." "We're prepared for that," Marcus said. "My publicist is working on a statement that explains the basic facts without getting into our personal business." "And you're prepared for people to think you're both crazy? Because that's what some people are going to think." Camille and Marcus looked at each other. They hadn't really talked about the public reaction beyond the media attention. "We'll deal with whatever comes," Camille said. "The important thing is that we're being honest now." Grandma Rose nodded approvingly. "That's my girl. Never let other people's opinions dictate how you live your life." She stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a bottle of her homemade peach brandy and 3 small glasses. "Now," she said, pouring the brandy, "let's drink to new beginnings and second chances." "But Marcus," she added, fixing him with a stern look, "this is your one and only second chance with my granddaughter. Don't waste it." "I won't," Marcus said solemnly. "I promise you I won't." They raised their glasses and Camille felt something shift inside her. Seeing Marcus face her grandmother's anger and disappointment head-on, watching him accept responsibility without making excuses, hearing him make promises he seemed genuinely committed to keeping, it helped her believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. "Grandma," she said as they prepared to leave, "thank you for not telling me I was crazy for wanting to try to work things out." "Baby girl," Grandma Rose said, pulling her into a fierce hug, "love makes us all a little crazy sometimes. The trick is knowing the difference between the kind of crazy that's worth it and the kind that's just going to break your heart." "And which kind do you think this is?" Grandma Rose looked over at Marcus, who was transferring back into his wheelchair for the trip to the car. "I think that depends on whether he means what he says about changing," she said. "But I think he just might. And I think you're strong enough to handle whatever comes next." As they drove away from her grandmother's house, Camille felt lighter than she had in days. They still had a long way to go, but they had cleared their first hurdle. Now they just had to tell the rest of the world. Marcus's parents lived in a sprawling mansion in the most exclusive part of town, the kind of place where old money and new money mingled at charity galas and country club events. Camille had met them several times during her relationship with Marcus, but she had never felt entirely comfortable around them. They were polite and welcoming, but she always sensed that they saw her as temporary, someone their son was dating while he figured out what he really wanted. "They're going to be shocked," Marcus said as they drove through the iron gates that led to his parents' estate. "More shocked that you can walk or more shocked that you lied to me about it?" Camille asked. "Probably more shocked that I lied to you," Marcus said. "My parents always taught me that honesty was the most important thing in any relationship." "Ironic," Camille said dryly. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "Very ironic." They pulled up to the front of the house, where Marcus's father was waiting for them. William Wellington was a tall, distinguished man in his 70s who had built his own fortune in real estate before passing the business on to his sons. He helped Marcus transfer from the car to his wheelchair with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing it for years. "Good to see you both," he said, kissing Camille's cheek. "Though I have to say you look a bit tired, my dear. I hope married life isn't wearing you out already." "Something like that," Camille said, forcing a smile. Marcus's mother, Patricia, met them at the front door. She was an elegant woman who had spent her life organizing charity events and serving on the boards of various cultural institutions. Like her husband, she was warm and welcoming, but Camille could see the slight confusion in her eyes as she took in their serious expressions. "This is a lovely surprise," Patricia said as they settled in the formal living room. "Though you both seem rather serious for newlyweds." "Mom, Dad," Marcus began, "we need to talk to you about something important." William and Patricia exchanged glances, the kind of look that passed between parents who were bracing themselves for bad news. "What is it, son?" William asked. Marcus took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you about my recovery. Something I should have told you years ago." "Recovery from what?" Patricia asked, though Camille could see understanding beginning to dawn in her eyes. "From my accident," Marcus said. "The experimental treatment I had worked better than I told you it did." The silence that followed was heavy with confusion and growing realization. "Marcus," William said slowly, "what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I can walk, Dad. I've been able to walk for 3 years. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. "What?" "The stem cell therapy worked," Marcus continued. "I have full function in my legs. I can walk, run, climb stairs, everything." "But you're in a wheelchair," Patricia said, as if stating the obvious would somehow make sense of what she was hearing. "Because I chose to be," Marcus said. "Not because I had to be." William leaned back in his chair, staring at his son with a mixture of shock and what looked like anger. "You chose to pretend you were still paralyzed?" he asked. "Sometimes," Marcus said. "When it felt right. When I wanted to maintain that connection to the community I'd been part of during my recovery." "And you never told us?" Patricia's voice was rising. "Your own parents? We've been worrying about you, accommodating your needs, treating you like you were still disabled, and all this time you could walk." "I know how it sounds," Marcus said. "It sounds insane," William said flatly. "It sounds like you've been lying to your family for 3 years." "I have been," Marcus admitted. "And I know how wrong that was." Patricia turned to Camille. "Did you know about this?" "No," Camille said. "I found out on our wedding night." The room fell silent again as the full implications of what Marcus had done began to sink in. "Let me understand this," Patricia said carefully. "You let Camille fall in love with you, you let her marry you, all while lying about something fundamental about yourself?" "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "And you," she turned back to Camille, You're just finding out that your husband has been deceiving you about his basic physical capabilities? That's right, Camille said. William stood up abruptly and walked to the window. Marcus, I have to say this is the most irresponsible, selfish thing I've ever heard of. Dad. No, let me finish. William turned back to face them. Do you have any idea what your mother and I have been through these past 5 years? Watching you struggle, worrying about your future, grieving for the active life we thought you'd lost forever. I know, Marcus said. And then to find out that for more than half that time, you've been perfectly fine but you just decided not to tell us? What kind of son does that to his parents? Marcus looked stricken. I never thought about how it would affect you and Mom. I was so focused on my own feelings about the recovery that I didn't consider how the secrecy would hurt you. Well, it did hurt us, Patricia said, tears starting in her eyes. It hurt us terribly. All those times we've held back from asking you to do things because we thought they would be too difficult for you. All those times we've worried about your independence, your future, your happiness. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt us, William said. Just like you hurt Camille. And the worst part is you did it intentionally. You made a deliberate choice to deceive the people who love you most. Camille watched the exchange with a heavy heart. She could see the genuine pain in Marcus's parents' faces, the sense of betrayal that mirrored her own feelings. But she could also see the regret and shame in Marcus's expression, the understanding of just how many people his choices had affected. What we don't understand, Patricia said, is why. Why would you choose to keep using a wheelchair when you didn't need to? Why would you choose to let us think you were still disabled? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Camille could see him struggling to find the right words. When I first started walking again, he said finally, everyone expected me to be grateful every second of every day. They expected me to be inspirational, to be a symbol of overcoming adversity. But I was angry too. Angry that I'd lost 5 years of my life, angry that I'd had to go through all that pain and uncertainty. He paused, looking down at his hands. And when I used the wheelchair sometimes, people treated me like the person I'd become during those years of recovery. Not like a medical miracle or a success story just like Marcus. I like being seen that way. But that wasn't your choice to make alone, William said. When your decisions affect other people, especially people who love you, you have an obligation to be honest with them. I know that now, Marcus said. I understand how selfish I was being. Patricia wiped her eyes and looked at Camille. How are you dealing with all this, dear? I'm still figuring it out, Camille said honestly. I'm hurt and angry, but I love Marcus and I want to try to work through it. Are you sure? Patricia asked gently. Because no one would blame you if you decided this was too much to handle. Camille appreciated the support, but she could hear the underlying message. Marcus's own mother thought what he had done might be unforgivable. I'm sure I want to try, Camille said. We're going to counseling and Marcus has promised complete honesty from now on. Promises are easy to make, William said. What happens the next time he decides that lying is easier than telling the truth? Then I'll leave him, Camille said simply. He knows that. This is his one chance to make things right. Marcus looked at her with gratitude and something that might have been relief. I won't waste it, he said. I swear to you, all of you, I will never lie about anything again. Marcus, Patricia said, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Stand up. Show us that you can really walk. Marcus looked uncertain. Are you sure? I'm sure. I need to see it with my own eyes. Marcus transferred out of his wheelchair and stood up. Then, at his mother's gesture, he walked across the room to where she was sitting and knelt down beside her chair. Oh my boy, Patricia said, reaching out to touch his face. You're really okay. I'm okay, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Patricia pulled him into a fierce hug, and Camille could see her shoulders shaking with emotion. When she finally released him, there were tears streaming down her face. I'm so angry with you, she said. But I'm also so grateful that you're all right. I know, Marcus said. I know and I'm sorry. William came over and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Son, what you did was wrong. Deeply wrong. But we love you and we'll figure out how to move forward from here. Thank you, Marcus said. Both of you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for it. You're going to have to earn it, William said. From all of us. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. I understand. Patricia looked at Camille. And you, dear, are welcome in this family no matter what you decide to do about your marriage. If you need anything, a place to stay, someone to talk to, anything at all, you call us. Thank you, Camille said, feeling touched by the offer. That means a lot to me. As they prepared to leave, William pulled Marcus aside. Son, he said quietly, I want you to think very carefully about what you're asking of Camille. You're asking her to build a life with someone who has already proven he's willing to lie to her about fundamental things. That's a huge ask. I know, Dad. Make sure you're worthy of the chance she's giving you. Because if you're not, if you hurt her again, you'll lose more than just your wife. You'll lose the respect of everyone who cares about you. I understand. I hope you do. As they drove home, Camille reflected on how different Marcus's parents' reaction had been from her grandmother's. Grandma Rose had been angry but ultimately supportive of their decision to work things out. Marcus's parents seemed more skeptical, more worried about whether he was capable of the kind of change their marriage would require. Your parents are really hurt, she said. I know, Marcus said. I never really thought about how my choices would affect them. I was so focused on controlling how people saw me that I didn't consider the cost to the people who love me. It's going to take time to repair those relationships too. I know. But I'm committed to doing whatever it takes. Camille looked over at him as he drove, using the hand controls that were no longer necessary for him. Tomorrow they would start telling their friends. Next week they would issue a public statement. And throughout it all, they would be working to rebuild the trust that his deception had damaged. It was going to be a long road, but for the first time since their wedding night, Camille felt like they might actually make it to the other side. The marriage counselor's office was nothing like what Camille had expected. Instead of the sterile, clinical environment she had imagined, Dr. Sarah Martinez had created a warm, comfortable space with soft lighting and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. Camille sat across from Marcus, with Dr. Martinez between them, and tried not to feel like she was about to be dissected. So, Dr. Martinez said after they had gone through the basic introductions, why don't you tell me what brings you here? Camille and Marcus looked at each other, and she could see him waiting for her to take the lead. My husband lied to me about something fundamental about himself, she said simply. For our entire relationship, including our wedding day, he let me believe he was paralyzed when he actually recovered 3 years ago. Dr. Martinez didn't react with shock or surprise, which Camille appreciated. She simply nodded and made a note on her pad. And Marcus, how would you describe the situation? I made a terrible mistake, Marcus said. I was afraid to tell Camille the truth about my recovery because I thought she might leave me. So I kept using my wheelchair sometimes and never told her I could walk. I know how wrong that was and I want to do whatever it takes to rebuild her trust. I see, Dr. Martinez said. And where are you both now in terms of your relationship? We're trying to work things out, Camille said. But I'm struggling with feeling like I don't know who I married. I'm angry and hurt and I don't know how to trust him again. And Marcus, how are you feeling? Guilty, Marcus said immediately. Ashamed. Grateful that Camille is willing to give me another chance, but terrified that I've damaged our relationship beyond repair. Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. What I'm hearing is that you both want to save your marriage, but you're dealing with a fundamental breach of trust. Is that accurate? Yes, they said simultaneously. Okay. Let's start by talking about what trust means to each of you. Camille, when you think about trusting someone, what does that look like? Camille thought for a moment. It means knowing that they're telling me the truth even when the truth is difficult. It means feeling safe to be vulnerable with them because I know they won't use that vulnerability against me. It means believing that they see me as an equal partner who deserves to make informed decisions about my own life. And Marcus. Trust means knowing that someone accepts me for who I really am, not just the version of myself that I think they want to see. It means being able to share my fears and insecurities without worrying that they'll think less of me or leave me. Dr. Martinez made more notes. I noticed that you both mentioned authenticity in your definitions but from different perspectives. Camille, you want Marcus to be authentic with you. Marcus, you want to feel safe being authentic with Camille. Does that sound right? Yes, Camille said. And the problem is that Marcus chose to be inauthentic because he was afraid of my reaction to his authenticity. Which created exactly the outcome I was trying to avoid, Marcus added. I was so afraid Camille would leave me if she knew the truth that I did something that actually gave her a reason to leave me. That's a really important insight, Marcus, Dr. Martinez said. Can you tell me more about what you were afraid would happen if you told Camille the truth? Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. I was afraid she would think I had been making fun of her or testing her, or that our whole relationship had been some kind of game to me. And why did you think she might react that way? Because I couldn't understand why someone like her would choose someone like me if she had other options. Camille stared at him. What does that mean? It means I felt like I wasn't good enough for you, Marcus said quietly. Rich, yes. Successful, yes. But not good enough as a person. I thought the wheelchair made me more sympathetic, more worthy of your love somehow. That's ridiculous, Camille said, feeling a flash of anger. I didn't fall in love with you because I felt sorry for you. I fell in love with you because you were kind and funny and intelligent and because you treated me like I mattered. I know that intellectually, Marcus said. But emotionally I couldn't believe it. I kept waiting for you to realize you could do better and leave me. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. Marcus, what you're describing sounds like some significant self-esteem issues. Can you tell me where those feelings come from? Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I don't know. Maybe from the accident, from feeling like I wasn't the same person anymore. Or maybe from before the accident, Dr. Martinez suggested gently. What was your sense of self-worth like before you were injured? Marcus was quiet for a long time. I guess I always felt like I had to prove myself. Like my value came from what I could accomplish, not from who I was as a person. And when the accident happened? I felt worthless, Marcus said simply. Like I wasn't a real man anymore, like I wasn't capable of taking care of myself, let alone anyone else. Camille felt her anger soften slightly. She could see the pain in Marcus's face as he talked about his feelings after the accident. And when you started walking again? Dr. Martinez asked. I felt like I should be grateful, but I was also angry. Angry that I'd lost 5 years of my life. Angry that everyone expected me to be inspirational about it. And confused about who I was supposed to be now. So using the wheelchair sometimes was a way of controlling that identity? Yes, Marcus said. When I was in the wheelchair, I knew who I was. I was someone who had overcome adversity, someone who had learned to see the world differently. When I could walk, I felt like I was just another rich guy who didn't deserve what he had. Dr. Martinez turned to Camille. How does it feel to hear Marcus talk about his motivations? It helps me understand why he made the choice he made, Camille said slowly. But it doesn't change the fact that he decided not to trust me with his real feelings. Instead of talking to me about his insecurities, he lied to me. That's fair, Dr. Martinez said. Marcus, how do you respond to that? She's right, Marcus said. I should have trusted her enough to share my fears instead of trying to manage them by being dishonest. What do you think would have happened if you had told Camille about your recovery early in your relationship? Marcus thought about it. I think she would have accepted it. I think she would have understood that recovery is complicated and that I was still figuring out who I was. But you didn't give her that chance. No, I didn't. Dr. Martinez looked at both of them. What I'm hearing is that this situation is about more than just the lie Marcus told. It's about trust, but it's also about self-worth, about fear of abandonment, about communication patterns in your relationship. So how do we fix it? Camille asked. Well, the first step is what you're doing right now, being honest about your feelings and trying to understand each other's perspectives. But rebuilding trust is going to take time and consistent action. Dr. Martinez turned to Marcus. Marcus, what specific things can you do to demonstrate to Camille that you're committed to honesty? I can tell her everything, Marcus said. Not just about my recovery but about my feelings, my fears, my insecurities. I can make sure she knows what's really going on with me instead of trying to manage her perception of me. That's good. What else? I can be patient when she has questions or doubts. I can understand that rebuilding trust is a process, and I can't expect her to just get over this because I apologize. And Camille, what do you need from Marcus to feel safe trusting him again? I need consistency, Camille said. I need to see that he really has changed, not just that he says he's changed. And I need him to understand that trust isn't just about big things like this. It's also about small things, everyday things. Can you give me an example? If he's having a bad day, I need him to tell me that instead of pretending everything is fine. If he's worried about something, I need him to share that with me instead of trying to handle it on his own. That makes sense, Dr. Martinez said. Marcus, how does that feel to you? Scary, Marcus said honestly. I'm not used to being that open about my feelings. But I understand why it's necessary. What makes it scary? I'm afraid that if Camille sees all my insecurities and weaknesses, she won't want to be with me anymore. But she already knows you have insecurities and weaknesses, Dr. Martinez pointed out. She's married to you. The question is whether you're going to share them with her honestly or try to hide them and risk creating more problems. Marcus nodded slowly. You're right. Hiding them already caused more problems than being honest could have. Exactly. Dr. Martinez looked at her watch. We're near the end of our time for today, but I want to give you both some homework. Homework? Camille asked. Every day this week, I want you to practice radical honesty with each other. Marcus, that means telling Camille how you're really feeling, even if it's something small or something you think might worry her. Camille, that means telling Marcus when you're having doubts or fears about your relationship, even if you think it might hurt his feelings. That sounds terrifying, Marcus said. It is terrifying, Dr. Martinez agreed. But it's also how you build real intimacy. You can't have a truly close relationship with someone if you're always managing what they know about you. As they left the office, Camille felt emotionally drained but also hopeful. For the first time since their wedding night, she felt like she and Marcus were working toward the same goal instead of just trying to manage the damage from his deception. How do you feel about the homework assignment? Marcus asked as they got in the car. Nervous, Camille said honestly. But I think it's what we need to do. Even if I tell you things that might make you think less of me? Camille looked at him, this man she had married, this man who was so successful and confident in business but so insecure in their relationship. Marcus, she said gently, I already know you're not perfect. The problem was never that you had flaws or insecurities. The problem was that you didn't trust me enough to share them with me. Marcus reached over and took her hand. I want to learn how to trust you, he said. I want to learn how to be the kind of husband you deserve. Then let's start practicing, Camille said. Right now. Tell me something you're feeling that you normally wouldn't share with me. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I'm terrified that even if we work through this, you'll never look at me the same way again. I'm afraid that every time you look at me, you'll remember that I lied to you, and you'll wonder what else I might be hiding. The honesty in his voice made Camille's heart ache. Thank you for telling me that, she said. And for what it's worth, I don't know if I'll ever look at you exactly the same way again. But that doesn't mean I'll look at you in a bad way. Maybe I'll look at you in a more complete way, as someone who makes mistakes but is willing to work to fix them. I hope so, Marcus said quietly. Your turn, he said. Tell me something you're feeling that you normally wouldn't share. Camille took a deep breath. I'm afraid that I'm being naive by giving you another chance. I'm afraid that my friends and family think I'm stupid for staying with you, and I'm afraid that maybe they're right. Do you think they're right? I don't know, Camille said honestly. I guess we'll find out. As they drove home together, both of them quiet and thoughtful, Camille realized that this was what Dr. Martinez had meant about radical honesty. It wasn't just about sharing information. It was about sharing the messy, complicated, uncertain parts of themselves that they usually kept hidden. It was scary, but it was also the first time since their wedding night that she felt like they were really talking to each other instead of just trying to manage the crisis Marcus had created. Maybe this was how they would find their way back to each other. One honest conversation at a time. The press release went out on a Tuesday morning. Marcus's publicist had crafted it carefully, striking a balance between transparency and privacy. Marcus Wellington, CEO of Wellington Tech, announced today that he has made a full recovery from the spinal cord injury he sustained 5 years ago. Thanks to experimental stem cell therapy, Mr. Wellington has regained full function in his legs and has been able to walk for the past 3 years. I chose to keep my recovery private while I adjusted to this major change in my life, Wellington stated. I am grateful for this second chance and look forward to moving forward with complete transparency. Mr. Wellington and his wife Camille ask for privacy as they navigate this transition. By noon, Camille's phone was ringing constantly. By evening, there were reporters camped outside the gates of Marcus's estate. Billionaire's secret recovery shocks tech world, read one headline. Wedding night revelation. CEO's wife discovers husband can walk, read another. The miracle that Marcus Wellington kept hidden, proclaimed a third. Camille sat in Marcus's home office, scrolling through news articles and social media posts about their situation, feeling sick to her stomach. You need to stop reading those, Marcus said, coming up behind her chair. He was walking, she noticed. He had been walking more often since they started counseling, as if practicing being his authentic self. Listen to this one, Camille said, pointing to her laptop screen. Sources close to the couple say that Mrs. Wellington had no idea about her husband's recovery and is considering whether to stay in the marriage. Sources close to the couple? Who are these sources? We haven't told anyone specific details about our situation. Reporters make things up when they don't have real information, Marcus said. You know that. And this one, Camille continued, clicking to another article. Marriage experts say that such a fundamental deception could be grounds for annulment. Are they right? Could I get an annulment based on fraud or something? Marcus sat down in the chair next to her. Do you want to get an annulment? No, Camille said immediately. But it's humiliating to read speculation about our marriage in the newspaper. I know. I'm sorry. I never thought about how public this would become once we told the truth. Camille's phone buzzed with another call from a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail, just like she had with the dozens of other calls from reporters trying to get her to comment on the story. We need to get away from here, she said. At least for a few days. I can't think clearly with all this noise. Where do you want to go? Camille thought about it. They had canceled their honeymoon to Italy, but maybe they could take a shorter trip somewhere quiet, somewhere they could focus on rebuilding their relationship without the distraction of media attention. What about your cabin in the mountains? She suggested. The one you took me to when we were dating? Marcus had a small rustic cabin about 3 hours north of the city. It was nothing like his mansion. Just a simple 2-bedroom place with a fireplace and a view of the lake. But it was private and peaceful, and Camille had some of her happiest memories with Marcus from the weekend they had spent there. That's a good idea, Marcus said. We could leave tomorrow morning, stay for a few days, give this media circus time to die down. And practice more of that radical honesty Dr. Martinez assigned us. Marcus smiled. That too. They packed light and left early the next morning, taking back roads to avoid any reporters who might try to follow them. The cabin was exactly as Camille remembered it, small and cozy, with a stone fireplace and rustic furniture that Marcus had chosen for comfort rather than style. I forgot how peaceful it is here, Camille said, standing on the deck that overlooked the lake. It's my favorite place, Marcus said, joining her at the railing. The first place I came when I could walk again. I spent a whole weekend here just walking around the lake, trying to figure out how I felt about being able to use my legs again. Camille looked at him in surprise. You never told me that. I never told you a lot of things, Marcus said. But I want to tell you now if you want to hear them. They spent the afternoon sitting on the deck, talking in a way they never had before. Marcus told her about the first time he had taken a step after the experimental treatment, how he had cried with relief and terror at the same time. He told her about the months of physical therapy that had been more painful than anything he had experienced during his initial recovery. He told her about the guilt he felt about getting better when so many other people with similar injuries never would. I felt like I was betraying the people I had met in support groups, he said. Like I was abandoning a community that had welcomed me and helped me figure out how to live with a disability. But you weren't abandoning them, Camille said. You were just moving to a different stage of your life. I know that now. But at the time, it felt like I was leaving them behind. And I was afraid that if I celebrated my recovery publicly, it would make other people feel like their lives were less valuable because they couldn't walk. Camille could understand that concern, even if she didn't agree with how Marcus had handled it. What about when you started dating again? She asked. Before you met me, did you tell other women the truth? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I didn't date much before I met you. Just a few casual dinners, nothing serious. And yes, I used the wheelchair for all of those dates. Because it was easier? Because I was still figuring out who I was, Marcus said. The wheelchair felt like the authentic version of myself. The walking version felt like someone I was still getting to know. But you were walking around your house, right? When you were alone? Sometimes. It depended on my mood, on how I was feeling about myself that day. Camille tried to imagine what that must have been like, to have such a fundamental choice about how to present yourself to the world. What about work? Did your employees know? Some of them. My assistant knew, my security team knew, a few of the senior executives. But I asked them to keep it private and they respected that. Weren't they confused about why you wanted to keep it secret? They understood that I was still processing the change. The business world can be intense about things like that. I didn't want my recovery to become a bigger story than the work we were doing. As the sun set over the lake, they moved inside and Marcus built a fire while Camille made dinner. It felt almost normal except for the weight of all the things they were still working through. Can I ask you something? Camille said as they sat in front of the fireplace after dinner. Anything. Do you miss it? Being in the wheelchair? Marcus thought about the question seriously. Sometimes. Not the limitations, obviously, but the perspective it gave me. The community, the sense of purpose that came from overcoming something difficult. You can still have those things, Camille said. You can still be part of that community, still advocate for disability rights, still use your experience to help other people. I know. And I want to do that. But it's complicated when you're someone who can choose whether or not to use a wheelchair on any given day. Life is complicated, Camille said. That doesn't mean you have to lie about it. No, Marcus agreed. It doesn't. They talked late into the night, sharing things they had never shared before. Camille told Marcus about her fears of not being sophisticated enough for his world, about feeling like an imposter at the charity galas and business dinners where she was often the only person without a college degree or family money. "I always felt like people were wondering what you saw in me," she said. "Like they were waiting for you to figure out that you could do better." "That's exactly how I felt about you," Marcus said. "Like you were going to figure out that you could do better." So we were both insecure about the same thing. Apparently. And instead of talking to each other about it, you decided to lie and I decided to pretend I was more confident than I really was. "We're not very good at this communication thing, are we?" Marcus said ruefully. "We're learning," Camille said. The next morning they took a long walk around the lake. Marcus moved easily beside her, pointing out landmarks and wildlife, looking more relaxed than she had seen him in weeks. For the first time since their wedding night, Camille found herself forgetting about his recovery and just enjoying being with him. "This is nice," she said as they stopped to rest on a fallen log overlooking the water. "What?" "This. Being together without having to think about all the drama and complications. Just being Marcus and Camille." "I've missed this," Marcus said. "I've missed feeling like we were on the same team." "We are on the same team," Camille said. "We're just learning how to play better." Marcus reached for her hand and she let him take it. His touch felt familiar and strange at the same time, like coming home to a place that had been redecorated while you were away. "Camille," he said softly, "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me completely? Not just decide to work through this but actually forgive me?" Camille looked out at the lake thinking about the question. A week ago she would have said she didn't know. But sitting here with Marcus, listening to him be more honest and vulnerable than he had ever been before, she could feel something shifting inside her. "I think I'm already starting to," she said. "Not because what you did was okay but because I can see how much you've learned from it. And because I love you even when you're stupid and scared and make terrible decisions." Marcus brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I love you too. More than I ever thought it was possible to love another person." "Then let's keep working on this," Camille said. "Let's keep learning how to be." 3 weeks later, Camille stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying lipstick and trying to calm her nerves. Today was the day they had finally agreed to do the interview. Not because they wanted to, but because the speculation and rumors had gotten so out of hand that silence was no longer an option. "You look beautiful," Marcus said, appearing in the doorway. He was wearing a navy blue suit, and he looked calm and confident in a way that Camille envied. "I look terrified," Camille said, checking her appearance one more time. "Which is how I feel." "We don't have to do this," Marcus said for what felt like the 100th time in the past week. "We can still call it off." "No," Camille said firmly. "We've already decided. And honestly, I'm tired of having our story told by people who don't know us." They had chosen Sarah Chin, not Marcus's physical therapist, but a different Sarah Chin who was a respected journalist known for her thoughtful, in-depth interviews. She had agreed to their conditions. No questions about intimate details of their marriage, no speculation about divorce or annulment, and the right to review the final edit before it aired. The interview was being filmed in the living room of Marcus's estate, with cameras positioned to capture both of them as they sat together on the couch. Sarah Chin was professional and warm, putting them at ease during the technical setup. "Remember," she said as they prepared to begin, "this is your opportunity to tell your story in your own words. Take your time, be honest, and don't worry about saying everything perfectly." The camera started rolling and Sarah began with basic background questions about how they met, how their relationship developed, and their wedding. Camille found herself relaxing slightly as they talked about the happier parts of their story. "Marcus," Sarah said, "can you tell us about your accident and your initial recovery?" Marcus explained about the rock climbing fall, the diagnosis, the 2 years of paralysis, and his decision to try the experimental treatment. He was clear and factual, and Camille could see him gaining confidence as he spoke. "And the treatment was successful?" "More successful than anyone expected," Marcus said. "After about 18 months of therapy, I had regained full function in my legs. I could walk, run, do everything I had been able to do before the accident. That must have been an incredible feeling." "It was," Marcus said. "But it was also complicated. I had spent 2 years building a new identity around being someone who used a wheelchair. I had connected with a community of people who shared that experience. When I could walk again, I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be." "So you chose to continue using your wheelchair sometimes?" "Yes. When it felt right, when I wanted to maintain that connection to the experience that had shaped me." Sarah turned to Camille. Camille, when you met Marcus, what was your understanding of his situation? I understood that he used a wheelchair due to a spinal cord injury, Camille said carefully. That was how he presented himself, and I had no reason to question it. And you fell in love with him. I did. I fell in love with Marcus the person, his kindness, his intelligence, his sense of humor. The wheelchair was just one aspect of who he was. When did you learn that he could walk? Camille took a deep breath. On our wedding night. Marcus told me then that he had recovered the ability to walk 3 years earlier. How did that make you feel? Shocked, Camille said honestly. Confused. I felt like I had married someone I didn't really know. Sarah turned back to Marcus. Marcus, why didn't you tell Camille about your recovery earlier? Because I was scared, Marcus said simply. I was afraid that if she knew I could walk, she would think our relationship had been some kind of game to me, or that I didn't really need her. I was afraid she would leave. But by not telling her, you created the very situation you were trying to avoid. Exactly, Marcus said. My fear of losing her led me to do something that actually put our relationship at risk. Camille, how did you decide to stay and work on your marriage? Camille had been dreading this question, but now that it was here, she found herself speaking from the heart. Because I love Marcus, she said. Because I could see that he had made a terrible mistake out of fear, not out of malice. And because I believed that our relationship was strong enough to survive this if we were both willing to do the work to rebuild trust. What has that work looked like? Counseling, Camille said. Learning how to communicate more honestly with each other. Marcus learning to trust me with his real feelings instead of trying to manage my perception of him. And Marcus, what have you learned from this experience? That honesty is always better than deception, even when the truth is scary, Marcus said. That the people who love you deserve to know who you really are, complicated parts and all. And that trust, once broken, has to be rebuilt through actions, not just words. Sarah asked a few more questions about their plans for the future, about Marcus's decision to be open about his recovery, about their hopes for their marriage. Throughout it all, Camille was struck by how natural and honest Marcus was being. This was the man she had fallen in love with, the one who was willing to be vulnerable and real. When the camera stopped rolling, Camille felt emotionally drained but also relieved. They had told their story truthfully and completely, without sensationalizing or dramatizing it. How do you think it went? Marcus asked as they watched the crew pack up their equipment. I think we told the truth, Camille said. Which is all we can do. The interview aired the following week on a primetime news magazine show. Camille and Marcus watched it together, holding hands on their couch as they saw their story unfold on screen. The response was overwhelming. Camille's phone was flooded with messages from friends and family, most of them supportive. The comments on social media were mixed. Some people criticized Marcus for his deception, others praised Camille for her willingness to forgive, and still others shared their own stories of marriage struggles and recovery. But what surprised Camille most were the messages from people in the disability community. Many of them understood Marcus's complicated feelings about his recovery, his struggle with identity, his desire to maintain connection to the experience that had shaped him. I never thought about how difficult it might be to stop being disabled, one woman wrote. Thank you for showing that recovery can be as complicated as injury. My husband had a similar experience with PTSD, wrote another. He got better, but he felt guilty about getting better when so many others don't. Your story helped me understand his feelings. A week after the interview aired, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including Camille. He announced that he was donating $50 million to spinal cord research and establishing a foundation to support people navigating the complex emotional aspects of recovery from serious injuries. I want to use my experience and my privilege to help other people who are dealing with the same complicated feelings I struggled with, he told Camille as they discussed the foundation plans. I want to make sure that people who are recovering from injuries have better support and understanding than I did. That's a beautiful way to honor your experience, Camille said. Both the difficult parts and the recovery. I want you to be involved, Marcus said. If you want to be. I want this to be something we do together. Camille thought about it. She had always been passionate about helping people, and this felt like a way to turn their personal struggle into something that could benefit others. I'd like that, she said. I think I'd like that very much. As they worked together on the foundation plans, Camille noticed something changing between them. The careful politeness that had characterized their interactions since the wedding night was giving way to something more natural and comfortable. They were laughing together again, finishing each other's sentences, falling back into the easy intimacy that had made her fall in love with him in the first place. But it was different now too. Deeper somehow. Built on a foundation of complete honesty instead of careful management of each other's perceptions. One evening, as they sat in Marcus's office working on grant applications for the foundation, Camille looked up from her laptop and realized something important. "Marcus," she said. "Ma'am?" He was focused on his computer screen, typing rapidly. "I forgive you." He stopped typing and looked at her. "What?" "I forgive you," she said again. "Completely. For lying to me, for not trusting me, for all of it. I forgive you." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really? I'm not saying it didn't hurt, or that I'll ever forget it happened. But I forgive you." Marcus got up from his chair and came around the desk to where she was sitting. He knelt down beside her chair and took her hands in his. "Thank you," he said softly. "I know I didn't deserve it, but thank you." "You've earned it," Camille said. "Over the past 2 months, you've shown me every day that you're committed to being honest, to rebuilding our trust, to being the kind of husband I deserve. You've earned my forgiveness." Marcus kissed her hands, then stood up and pulled her into his arms. As he held her, Camille felt the last of her anger and hurt finally fade away, replaced by something stronger and more durable than what they had before. They still had work to do. Trust was something that had to be maintained every day, not just rebuilt once. But standing there in Marcus's arms, surrounded by the plans for their foundation and their shared commitment to helping others, Camille felt confident that they would continue to do that work together. "I love you," Marcus whispered against her hair. "I love you too," Camille said. "All of you. The complicated, imperfect, recovering version of you. Even when I'm in the wheelchair?" Camille pulled back to look at him. Marcus still used his wheelchair sometimes, when he was feeling nostalgic for that part of his journey or when he wanted to connect with others who shared that experience. It no longer felt like a deception to her, it felt like Marcus honoring all the different parts of himself. "Especially when you're in the wheelchair," she said. "Because that's when you're being most true to all the different pieces of who you are." Marcus smiled, the first completely unguarded smile she had seen from him since their wedding night. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we keep building," Camille said. "Our marriage, our foundation, our life together. One honest conversation at a time." 1 year later, Camille stood in the ballroom of the downtown hotel where she had first met Marcus, watching him address a crowd of donors, researchers, and families affected by spinal cord injuries. The Wellington Recovery Foundation's first annual gala was exceeding all their expectations, both in terms of attendance and fundraising. Marcus was speaking from his wheelchair tonight, having chosen it because he wanted to address the audience as someone who understood their experience from the inside. Watching him speak passionately about the need for better emotional support during recovery, Camille felt her heart swell with pride. "Recovery isn't just about regaining physical function," Marcus was saying. "It's about figuring out who you are when your entire understanding of yourself has been challenged. It's about finding ways to honor the person you became during your injury while also embracing the person you might become through recovery." The audience was hanging on every word. In the years since their interview aired, Marcus had become an unexpected voice in conversations about disability, recovery, and the complexity of identity. He spoke at medical conferences, wrote articles for research journals, and consulted with rehabilitation hospitals about providing better psychological support for their patients. "My wife and I learned something important this year," Marcus continued, and Camille felt him catch her eye across the room. "We learned that healing isn't about going back to who you were before. It's about integrating all the different versions of yourself into someone new and whole." After the speech, as guests mingled and bid on silent auction items, Camille found herself surrounded by people sharing their own stories of recovery and resilience. A young woman who had lost her leg in a car accident talked about her struggle with identity as an athlete. A man whose depression had lifted after years of treatment described feeling guilty about being happy when so many others were still suffering. "Thank you for creating a space to talk about these things," the young woman said to Camille. "I never realized how many people struggle with the complicated feelings that come with getting better." "Thank you for sharing your story," Camille replied. "That's what makes this work meaningful." Later, as they drove home from the gala, Camille reflected on how much their life had changed in the past year. The foundation had become a central focus for both of them, giving them a shared purpose that went beyond their personal relationship. But more than that, the work had taught them both about the power of honesty and vulnerability. "Successful evening," Marcus said, reaching over to take her hand. "Very successful," Camille agreed. "I think we raised enough money to fund 3 new research projects. I'm proud of what we've built together," Marcus said. Not just the foundation but, our marriage. The way we learn to trust each other again. Camille squeezed his hand. I'm proud of us too. As they pulled into their driveway, Camille noticed something different. There were lights strung through the trees in their front yard, and soft music was playing from speakers hidden in the garden. What's all this? She asked. Come and see, Marcus said, transferring to his wheelchair and leading her toward the house. The front door opened before they reached it, and Camille's grandmother appeared, beaming at them both. Grandma? What are you doing here? I'm here for the surprise, baby girl, Grandma Rose said, kissing Camille's cheek. Now come on, everyone's waiting. Everyone turned out to be their families and closest friends, gathered in the backyard which had been transformed with lights and flowers and tables set for dinner. A small string quartet was playing softly in one corner, and there was a photographer discreetly capturing the evening. What is this? Camille asked, looking around at the familiar faces of everyone they loved. Marcus maneuvered his wheelchair to the center of the gathering and motioned for quiet. 1 year ago, he began, I made the worst mistake of my life. I lied to the woman I love about something fundamental about myself, and I nearly lost her because of it. Camille felt tears starting in her eyes as she realized what this was. Tonight, exactly 1 year after I told Camille the truth about my recovery, I want to ask her to marry me again. Not because our first wedding wasn't real, but because I want to make vows to her as the person I really am, without any secrets or lies between us. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Camille Williams Wellington, will you marry me again? Will you let me promise to love you and be honest with you and build a life with you, with everyone we care about as witnesses? Camille looked around at their gathered family and friends, all of whom were smiling through their own tears. She looked at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. She looked at Marcus's parents, who had become some of her strongest supporters over the past year. Then she looked at Marcus, this man who had hurt her deeply but had spent every day since then proving that he was worthy of her love and trust. Yes, she said, dropping to her knees beside his wheelchair so they were at eye level. Yes, I'll marry you again. Marcus slipped a new ring onto her finger, this one engraved with the date of their second proposal and the words truth and trust. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her while their family and friends cheered around them. I love you, he whispered against her lips. All of me loves all of you. I love you too, Camille whispered back. Let's do this right this time. 2 months later they had their second wedding. It was smaller than the first one, held in the garden of Marcus's estate with just 50 of their closest family and friends in attendance. Marcus walked down the aisle to meet Camille, moving steadily on his own 2 feet, but his wheelchair was positioned at the altar beside him, a symbol of all the different parts of himself that he was bringing to their marriage. When it came time for vows, they had written their own. Camille, Marcus said, I promise to trust you with my whole self, my fears, my insecurities, my complicated feelings, and my love. I promise to be honest with you even when honesty is scary, and to never again let my fear make decisions for our relationship. I promise to see you as my equal partner in all things, and to build our life together on a foundation of truth and trust. Marcus, Camille said, I promise to love all the different versions of you, the man who was injured, the man who recovered, the man who sometimes needs wheels, and the man who sometimes needs to walk. I promise to be patient as we continue to learn how to trust each other completely, and to never stop working to build something beautiful together. As they kissed to seal their second marriage, Camille felt the deep satisfaction of a choice well made. They had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to their relationship and used it to build something stronger and more authentic than what they'd had before. After the ceremony, as they danced to the same song they had chosen for their first wedding, Marcus whispered in her ear, Any regrets about giving me a second chance? Camille looked around at their gathered family and friends, at the life they had built together, at the foundation they were creating to help other people navigate difficult recoveries. She thought about the honest conversations they had every day now, the way they had learned to trust each other with their whole selves, the peace that came from knowing they were building their marriage on solid ground. No regrets, she said firmly. Sometimes the best things come from learning how to forgive and start over. Even when the person you're forgiving is someone who lied to you on your wedding night? Especially then, Camille said, pulling back to look at him. Because that's when forgiveness means the most. As they continued to dance, surrounded by everyone they loved, Camille reflected on something her grandmother had told her on their first wedding day. Marriage isn't about finding someone perfect, baby girl. It's about finding someone worth doing the hard work with. Marcus definitely wasn't perfect. But he was worth the hard work. He was worth the choice to forgive, worth the effort to rebuild trust, worth the decision to love him completely, wheelchair and all. And as they spun around the dance floor, Camille knew with absolute certainty that she would make that choice again every day for the rest of their lives. Not because their love was perfect but because it was real. Not because their marriage would be easy but because it would be honest. And sometimes, that was the most beautiful surprise of all.